Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Friday, August 22nd, 2025. Time for another Friday show. Got to wrap up for the weekend. Tell you everything you need to know about news that's coming up, and or sometimes we spend Friday telling you almost nothing about what you actually need to know news-wise over the weekend. But sometimes we spend that time on one or two long reads that I think should be informing your discussion over the weekends and in the weeks to come. But hey, we can't do it all. We only got 2 hours, and somehow we can't make it fit in all of that. Lots of news today. We'll start with, I guess, that. We can recap just everything news-wise so that you know what people will be chatting about this weekend. Hard to know where to start. The breaking news at the moment, as we speak, well, as I speak, and as you listen to me speak, John Bolton's house is being raided by the FBI. Yes, master musician John Bolton, but rather former national security advisor and famously mustachioed person being raided right now because, of course, he made an enemy out of Donald Trump by telling us things about him. And that's that. I don't know what the case is that they're trying to make. Not really sure. And I don't make the rules about this, but I think this means he's going to be elected president now. His home is being raided by the FBI. I think that's how we got the last guy. Anyway, I think they think that they're going to come up with some sort of evidence that Bolton's book was published using classified information or otherwise restricted information. I'm not really sure what documents they are. And of course, it doesn't make any sense in the world for Donald Trump, who stole secret documents and stuffed them in his bathroom at his Pervalago sex club, for him to be making this accusation, except that, every Republican accusation is a confession. He did do this stuff. And so he needs to find somebody who has done the same thing in order to blame them. And I don't know what exactly. I'm not certain what the logic is, but it doesn't really matter that it be logic. That's just sort of how he operates. I think, where can I find this? I'm scrolling back just to try and find the actual verbiage of it. But everybody's good friend on social media, Grudgy, as we know, who uses the Fudgy the Whale avatar, said something along the same lines and saying, now we got to find somebody who used to bust into girls' locker rooms and charge them with that. Quick, find me somebody else who raped somebody in a department store. Got to cover up my tracks that way. So everything that he's done, there you go. Also, an excellent idea from Jim White, who says we should start the rumor that Bolton had a full copy of the Epstein files. And maybe he did. It did make me wonder, can I file this along with the other things, myths about the government and the shadowy figures behind it that have been shattered in the latest, in the last couple of years, including my favorite being, if you try to smash your way into the Congress and onto the floor of the House or the Senate in order to stop proceedings there, particularly to stop the election of a president because you disagree with the outcome of the election, you will be killed. The guards will at least stop you. And if they can't stop you, they'll shoot you. And if they can't shoot you because there's too many of you, the National Guard will come rolling in and restore order. And now we found out that's actually not true. And you'll get the Presidential Medal of Freedom instead. You'll be pardoned, and everyone will declare sacking the Capitol a heroic act. I didn't realize growing up that was the case, but it turned out to be true. I guess this one I would add, in the movies and the television shows, a guy like John Bolton has mailed packages of ultra secret important information that will take down the president to the top newspapers around the country and around the world, and will release it on the internet, or it's in a safe, or his lawyer has instructions to bring it to the UN, or I don't know, something like that, if he should be targeted. in an investigation like this. And as it turns out, it's mostly he just stand around and complain, and then will be shuffled off to an FBI office and questioned for several hours and come out and say, this is an outrage, and then just sit there and take it. I guess it's just sort of one of those things that you figured, well, I don't know, I saw in the movies that this was true. However, I guess where the movies were right, or the movies and TV were right, I guess this must have been what they were talking about when my TV told me, I remember who said it, but we say it's the TV. He said it. When they said, when you play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die. Right. Well, Bolton's been playing the Game of Thrones, as has Trump. All of the things that he did, all of the crazy risks that he took, all the laws he broke, all the people he ruined and endangered, actually killed parts of your family, perhaps, by mishandling COVID, etc. No danger to him, as it turns out, because he's captured the throne, and now you're all under arrest for thinking he's done something wrong. It's an interesting day. Smaller news, you need to know that you can get a table at Cracker Barrel this weekend. I don't know if you were looking to do that, but if you were, you're in luck, because MAGA won't be there. Because F Cracker Barrel. Why is MAGA mad at Cracker Barrel? I do not know. I mean, I guess I know. I'm not sure if I know. But I have to tell you, one, that they're mad. And, I guess don't worry about it too much. Like if you're a Cracker Barrel stockholder, is Cracker Barrel publicly traded? I have no idea. Anyway, they're mad at Cracker Barrel like they were mad at the NFL. But I can't stay mad at you, NFL, or Bud Light, or Keurig, or whoever else they've been mad at in the past. Although, as we were laughing about this at home last night, they do tend to boycott things that at least you would say, well, they were participating in that economy. They were big NFL fans. They were big Bud Light fans. I don't know if they were big Keurig fans necessarily, and they were going to withhold their dollars, except they didn't. They were lying about that, and they never intended to follow through. I think they were boycotting NASCAR. How's that going, by the way? All of you guys, all you blue state intellectuals, after leaving the fancy Italian delis that scare your high school friends, heading over to the NASCAR, are you? Spending your big dollars there. Cracker Barrel is bad, according to MAGA, and they're being very disingenuous about this, and I'm not sure whether the reason that I think is actually behind it, or what other people have told me they think is behind it, is really behind it, and they're being dodgy about it because obviously it's a racism, and you can't go on record with that immediately straight out of the box unless you're Donald Trump, I think, or Chris Rufo, or one of a few select, Stephen Miller. There are a few people who you can count on to go to the racism right out of the box and get away with it. But I'm not certain whether this is it or whether they just really are dumb and they're looking for something to be outraged about. So here's what happened. Cracker Barrel redesigned its logo, I guess you would say. It's a very, it was an old looking thing. I don't know how old Cracker Barrel is, but they had you may have seen it. And they had a certain typeface. They mostly kept the same typeface. They didn't even change that. And then a color scheme was that yellow background, sort of, I don't know, was it black or brownish maybe lettering? Anyway, it said Cracker Barrel. It said Old Country Store on it somewhere in type. But it had a old-timey looking guy, I guess. It was really nondescript. It was a man, a white man, I guess. He was a line drawing rendering, a pen and ink thing, and he was leaning on a barrel. He may even have been sitting in one of the rocking chairs that they have outside for you to wait in / are for sale. Anyway, he was sitting in a rocking chair, leaning on a barrel, or sitting next to a barrel, presumably a Cracker Barrel. Could have been illicit whiskey. I don't know. The point is, that guy is gone. Right? I don't know. the guy is gone. The words Old Country Store are gone. And they've swapped a weird, it was sort of an ovoid shape that they had the type in, but I can't describe it. You could go and take a look, and there's a lot of side-by-side comparisons. The only thing is the guy is gone. So's the barrel in the chair. It would have been really funny if they just left the barrel in the chair. Cracker Barrel. F this, I'm leaving. That's the new tagline. Anyway, it looks like ICE stopped by because the guy's gone and all the stuff is gone. And it just says Cracker Barrel now, which I don't know. Apparently that's bad. That's really it. They're angry that that's the case. Now, Scott Anderson has sent me something here. Thank you. Scott! That's right. I appreciate it. And I have seen this, and people have hinted this to me, and this would be great if this is an article discussing it, because I just got some social media things about it. Oh, what? Really? I'm going to take a look at this one. This isn't that's not what I got the hint at. But this is fascinating, too. We might have to do the whole show about everybody's guess as to why they're mad at Cracker Barrel. I don't know what it is. My thinking was they're very mad, and they say this new logo is too woke. And the only thing I could make out at first, without any other hints, was, are they mad because there was a white guy there, and now the white guy is gone? And they think, you took out the white guy because you're so woke that if there wasn't somebody of every race leaning on a barrel, there should be nobody. Like, I don't know if that's their theory. Who knows? And I thought, maybe you would be comforted to know if you just let's imagine that the guy has gone away to do some racism. He's out there. And so in a little cross logo, references. He's out there discriminating against Aunt Jemima, maybe even beating her up someplace. You remember though, they used to be. This is funny. They were angry when they took the black woman off the Aunt Jemima pancake mix and the syrup, because they were like modernizing and saying this is actually problematic, and they changed the name and everything. Well, tradition says that you gotta have a picture of a fictional black woman on my pancake mix, or else it isn't genuinely. I don't know what. And they were angry about that. They're angry about removing the Native American woman from Land O'Lakes products. Like, why are you being so woke? So now they've removed a white guy from something, and they're mad about that too. It seems there's no end to their outrage. Don Jr. is angry about it. I'm not really sure why it is. The rumor that I saw floated, and I know nothing about whether this is true or not, but the rumor that was floated was Cracker Barrel has a new-ish CEO, maybe a black woman, and so they ascribe to the decision to remove the white man from the logo to be, oh, well, that's woke. She's getting rid of it because that guy's white. He's nothing. He's yellow. I mean, he's a pen and ink rendering, and she's black, and so therefore they didn't put a black person in. They didn't. I don't know. It was very strange. I don't know whether the CEO of Cracker Barrel is a black woman or not. That sounds like it could be true. It could also be just MAGA nonsense. I have no idea. Now, Scott has sent me something, I think, entirely different. And this one features Donald Trump Jr., so you know it's going to be true. This is from HuffPost via MSN. MSN changed its name? I know MSNBC changed its name, but is MSN changing its name? I don't know. It says here, the headline is right-winger, others call out woke new change to Cracker Barrel's peg game. Now, is this old? Is this something they were angry about before and they didn't get traction with it, so now they're angry about the logo too? I don't know. I haven't seen anybody complaining about the peg game. There's the old thing there. I don't know what to make of this. Anyway, let's see what this says. There's a little video that goes along with it, but I can't just play you that. The conservative outcry over Cracker Barrel's new logo is apparently yesterday's news. Well, no wonder we're reporting it now. Now, at least one prominent right-winger is having a tizzy over the restaurant chain's tableside peg game. You've seen that one, right? It's the one, it's an old-timey wooden board game. This is one they have plastic tees in it. You make a pyramid with, I don't remember how many number of spaces in it, of holes drilled in a board, and there's golf tees in each one except for one, and you got to jump you've seen it, right? It's a little diversion, something to play with while you're waiting for your food. Okay, and now at least one prominent right-winger is having a tizzy over this stupid game. The peg game, it's a fun game, with its unique directions, is that right? Has been a way for hungry customers to occupy their time while waiting for their orders since 1960. So, that's good. So I don't really know. I guess it's a good diversion. I think you eat the golf tees while you're waiting. Don't do that. That's bad medical advice. Yeah, so you play this game while you're waiting. The directions on the game have now changed. And in the eyes of one conservative, just gotten too nice. I didn't even realize there was directions. There must have been. But I had already seen that game. In fact, I had built one in wood shop in what is now referred to as middle school. What was then junior high school. So I have one upstairs of my own, and I didn't make it with wooden. I didn't use tees, though. I made little wooden dowels that we put in there. It's not that much fun, and I don't think I've played it in about 40 years. But I wonder what the directions say. The directions now say you have to become transgender to play it. What kind of, I don't know what well, let's find out. They're too nice. Good luck, it says, when it really means F you, get the hell out of my country. The goal of the game, the article says, is to whittle down the number of pegs on the board to one through a series of jumping pegs, not unlike checkers, which is also available at Cracker Barrel, and likewise woke, because now all the checkers are black. It's crazy. Previously, directions on the game explained that people who have only one peg left on the board are geniuses. Yeah, now I see what's happening. While people with two pegs left are pretty smart. However, if you leave 3 pegs, the game considers you dumb. I guess that's not nice. While anyone who leaves 4 pegs is ready for this one? This is a quote. It's in all caps, and it's spelled out this way with hyphens. Egg no ray moose. Well, with 3 O's. Ignoramus, but okay. Well, that was the old game. New peg games have removed the playful insults and instead say, leave 3 or more. No reason to be embarrassed. Try again. Boo! We're too soft on peg game players these days. How is America going to compete in the worldwide peg games unless and by the way, once you figure out how to just solve the thing, you can just solve it forever. But anyway, what can I tell you? We're not training our kids to be tough enough in international restaurant waiting for your food peg games. And this is a cause for outrage. But this is only because, I don't know, the sign outrage could only last so long. The new wording was the last straw, or peg. It does say that. The last straw for Sean Davis. Oh, Sean Davis. I remember that guy. He's the CEO of The Federalist. Can you imagine in this economy? At this time in our history where the rule of law is collapsing all around us. I know he's cheerleading for it, but I mean, wouldn't that occupy your time rather than the peg game? Sean Davis, I think, by the way, just personally, I think at one point when I outlined some crazy ass Senate procedure that they could have done, Democrats, had they had the gumption to do so, not that they ever would have, but, could you have done this? Yes, you could have. Spent an inordinate amount of time insisting that I didn't know anything about what I was talking about and what a moron I was. And this guy, now, he's progressed on to complaining about the peg game. He took to Twitter on Wednesday to gripe about the change to anyone who might be looking for a new silly reason to get worked up over something that doesn't matter in the long run. Cracker Barrel didn't just destroy its logo and restaurant vibe, which they didn't. It's also changed the peg game to make dumb people feel better when they do poorly, which, it's a business, right? How are we doing on the whole vinegar versus honey thing with the flies that we're trying to attract to the business? The honey tests better. Let's roll out more honey. And it's just a business decision. Anyway, he then illustrates it with a picture of the insulting instructions and now the new, less insulting instructions. HuffPost reached out to Cracker Barrel for comment on Davis's peg game protest, but no one immediately responded. In fact, HuffPost reached out to see if anybody read Sean Davis's comment about this thing and took him seriously, and they didn't. No one would answer. So far, it doesn't look as if Davis's posts will inspire calls for a MAGA boycott like in 2023 against Bud Light over its partnership with transgender TikTok influencer Dylan Mulvaney, but there were still some people who weren't thrilled with the change. Who is it? The voice of the signal, I guess, is tweeting this thing. I honestly feel like this is worse than anything I've seen so far about this rebrand. These empty suits removing a mild, good-hearted tease in favor of a bland encouragement is a good illustration of our rotting, empty culture. Let's see. Somebody else says, the everyone gets a trophy era has come home to roost. I know, right? What are we going to do when the Russians come with their peg games? I mean, I can't imagine anything mattering less, but, I guess they needed to spend their time on this one. They're pretty sure that this is responsible for the drop in, I guess this is the answer to whether or not Cracker Barrel is publicly traded. Cracker Barrel stock presently down nearly $8 together, erasing roughly $100 million in value after their new logo was revealed. I'm sure it was closely related to that. As opposed to, why would a brand rebrand at all? Probably because they're like, hey, what's going on? Our stock price and our earnings are dropping. What can we do to refresh the brand? Anyway, but where some saw only sorrow, one brave soul saw something else, an opportunity to make a subtle but dirty joke. If it gets any more woke, all right, you know what? Never mind. I'm not even going to tell that joke. Because I'm not sure I get it. And two, what's the point? All right, I'm not certain how widespread outrage is about the peg game, but I guess that's something new. So if I caught you up on, hey, conservatives are mad at Cracker Barrel, that's good. You'll understand what's going on. And you might be slightly ahead of the curve now, thanks to Scott. You know that they're also mad about the peg game and the checkers and the Necco wafers that they sell in the old country store. I'm not certain what's wrong with them, but I don't know. Anyway, there's more information about other things. So, yeah, they're raiding John Bolton's house, and there's a couple of news reports about it. One of the earliest actually came from the Bulwark, I think, because Benjamin Whitties, who I think occasionally writes for them or sort of moves in the same circles as the Bulwark anyway, must live nearby and is like on site. But he's not the only journalist on site. Apparently, the New York Post somehow got embedded with the FBI team doing the raid and has like exclusive photos from inside, where, as it happens, John Bolton's house is furnished entirely with Cracker Barrel peg games. I'm not certain whether that's going to redeem him or not. He says he's got the old ones. He's against the new ones, of course. So here's the report in the Bulwark. Jonathan Last put up the post, which I guess means, I don't know whether Whitty's, I can't remember whether he's part of this place or not, but if he is, he's busy. Anyway, in a dawn operation, it says, FBI agents descended on the home of Trump's former national security advisor. Shortly before 7 a.m. Friday morning, the FBI and Montgomery County, that's Maryland, suburban Maryland, police were seen at the Bethesda, because that's also suburban Maryland, Bethesda home of John Bolton, and presumably seen from the Bethesda home window of Ben Whitties, apparently, who, of course, was national security advisor for part of Donald Trump's first term. Montgomery County Police sealed off the street on which Bolton lives while an unmarked black SUV, it has to be all right, parked in front of Bolton's house. Montgomery County Police confirmed that they were on site in support of the FBI. Lawfare's Ben Whitties was on site, live streaming on Substack. So he's not a Bulwark guy, but he's a Lawfare guy. Following the Bulwark's initial reporting, Rupert Murdoch's New York Post reported that the FBI had conducted a raid at 7:12 a.m. Bolton was the target of an investigation at the end of Trump's first term for allegedly disclosing classified information in his 2020 memoir, The Room Where It Happened. And as a brief refresher, they offer this. Bolton served as Trump's third national security advisor following the brief stint of international super spy Mike Flynn and the stormy tenure of H.R. McMaster. We know him, of course, as H.R. Puffin Stuff McMaster. Bolton succeeded McMaster on April 9th, 2018, and remained National Security Advisor until he resigned on September 10th, 2019. After leaving the Trump administration, he wrote a book about his tenure. Per government requirements, Bolton submitted the book manuscript to the National Security Council for pre-publication review, a process designed to ensure that former government employees do not inadvertently publish classified information. The review process delayed the book's publication. On April 27th, 2020, after lengthy negotiations with Ellen Knight, the Senior Director for Records, Access, and Information Security Management at the NSC, Bolton claimed that Knight, spelled K, like, the K-N-I-G-H-T, gave oral approval to move forward with publication. Not the dirty kind, the regular kind. But on May 2nd, 2020, the NSC's Senior Director for Intelligence began a supplemental review of the manuscript. Remember, this is still Trump administration, May 2020. The publication delayed again. Bolton had given his publisher permission to move ahead with the publication when the Ellis review was still underway. Bolton's book had already been printed and bound, and members of the media had obtained advance copies when, on June 17th, the government sought an injunction to prevent its release. President Trump then attempted to have the courts strip Bolton of all proceeds from the book sales. The Trump administration's initial civil action, U.S. v. Bolton, was followed by an attempt to pursue criminal charges against him. In the fall of 2020, as the presidential election neared a close, Trump's DOJ head for national security matters, John Demers, opened the criminal investigation and impaneled a grand jury, and boy were they grand, to determine whether Bolton could be prosecuted for criminally disclosing classified information. In June of 2021, the Department of Justice, under new leadership, dropped its investigation and ended its attempt to hijack the proceeds from book sales. The new leadership would, of course, been Joe Biden's administration. In theory, the statute of limitations for criminally disclosing classified information is 5 years. Trump terminated Bolton's security clearance on January 20th of this year as one of his first acts in office. There's a bit more. We'll get to it after this.
Hi, I'm Scott Anderson, the guy that writes the daily summary for this show, Kagro in the Morning. Thank you to everyone that supports this show. Many of you send donations through PayPal, Patreon, Square Cash, Radio Public, and so on. Some of you write your own essays and send them in, or read articles with your own commentary. We appreciate it. Now, some of you are listening to this and thinking, I'd like to help, but isn't there something I could do that wouldn't require money or effort? Why, yes, there is. You can just like us. On Daily Kos, they call it the recommend button. YouTube has a thumbs up. There are hearts and likes and love buttons. Tap our love button. Tap our love button every day. Share our shows and summaries on Facebook and Twitter, YouTube and iTunes, Stitcher and Amazon. Most of these places allow you to write a review, so a sentence or two would be great. Recommend us to social media, or tell your friends to listen to the show. You aren't just helping us, you're helping them find their new favorite thing to listen to. You could change the world. So thank you in advance from me and everybody else in the world.
All right, welcome back, everybody, and to you-know-where, and I'm late on welcoming you back, so I'm going to stop right now, but it's a podcast. You're stuck here. You know where you are. All right, I was looking during the break, though. The reason I didn't come back and say, hey, welcome back, everybody, to the Kagro in the Morning Show right here on Networks Radio before now, is I was searching around to see if I could find, I had seen on Blue Sky the assertion that the New York Post had, in fact, had a reporting team embedded with the FBI on this raid. And now I can't find it. And it doesn't appear to be a part of the Bulwark's reporting about it. I think I clicked through to someone else's article and I'm not finding it, but I'll see if I can come up with it later on. Note to self. All right, let's see. New York Post. That'll be my note. All right. Somebody later tell me, why did I write down New York Post? So where were we? We had just learned that we were reminded that Trump had terminated Bolton's security clearance on January 20th, withdrew his government security detail that had been protecting him, and it would presumably have woken him up to tell him that the FBI was there, or maybe even have slowed them down on the way in. He had lost his security detail, even though he had been the target of an assassination plot arranged by the Iranian government. Bolton was also named on the members of the executive branch deep state list in the book Government Gangsters, published in 2023 by now FBI Director Kash Patel. I also should point out that there are others posting on social media about this raid, and I think Greg Sargent among them, saying that the word is that this raid was apparently personally ordered by Kash Patel. So, if you're wondering what is the meaning of his having published an enemies list first and then been confirmed as FBI director, mostly by telling people, no, I don't have an enemies list, or I don't take that thing seriously. And then he starts making raids at people's houses. You tell me what's going on. Let's see. 3 minutes after the raid commenced, Patel cryptically tweeted, this is a great thing to do if you're FBI director, teasing people about ongoing raids at their houses. No one is above the law. FBI agents on mission. That's really it. That's all he tweets, but that was wink, wink. Now everyone will know I was talking about this raid. Let's see, a couple of updates here. 7:24 a.m. Okay, there was a raid. These are the notes about the updates. Okay, never mind that then. You don't have to say that. Let's see. Okay, so I guess maybe it was the Bulwarks reporting that had that, because some of the updates, this is right now, it's important to read the updates. At 7:34 a.m., it was updated with the New York Post story, and then it says at 8:03, updated to reflect that the New York Post photos were not taken this morning. And as I recall, that was part of the proof that they were supposedly embedded with the FBI, that they had photos that they were publishing from inside the search perimeter. I think that was the terminology that they used earlier in an earlier version of the Bulwark story. And now that they've found out or been told that those photos were taken earlier, and I'm not certain how that would be the case, but apparently they believe that, and now I guess they must have revised the claim of embedding out of the story. So, okay, now I need to write a note to myself, ignore previous note to self. There you go. Crossing it out would probably be shorthand for that. We'll do it that way. All right. Let's see. Other crazy things that are happening. There are many. You need to know, in the middle of yesterday's discussion about the way Bill Pulte at Fannie Mae is going crazy, no one has ever seen Fannie Mae director be an attack dog for an administration before. But targeting several prominent Democrats on Donald Trump's enemies list, essentially. And by the way, we got a story about the enemies list somewhere if we can get to that today. Among them, Letitia James, which has led weirdo Ed Martin to show up in a flasher trench coat outside of her house just the other day as well. This is related to Letitia James and a reminder about why Trump is so mad at her, but an update on that news from out of New York. And by the way, Ed Martin, out of New York. You should really leave New York. NBC News reports New York appeals court throws out Trump's more than $500 million fraud judgment. Not entirely. And it's a mixed judgment. They actually let the conviction stand, but they basically said, we don't agree with the size of the penalty. And then there were a few other things that they tinkered with in between. The ruling by the state appellate division spares the president and his companies from having to pay an award that they had warned would severely damage his company, which really is okay. And it really won't damage his company. He's in the crypto business now. But anyway, let's see. Dara Gregorian and Adam Rice, I believe. I hope that's the right pronunciation for you, Adam. Report this for NBC. A New York appeals court on Thursday dismissed a $500 million civil fraud penalty against Trump and his companies for routinely overvaluing their properties in financial statements. It's an interesting timing, to say the least. That's what people might call mortgage fraud informally, which is, of course, what they're accusing Letitia James of and what they're accusing Adam Schiff of and what they accused Lisa Cook of yesterday. Just by way of information. Some judges on the State Appellate Division's First Department agreed that Trump and his companies had engaged in fraud, but agreed with their colleagues that the award was an excessive fine. And I think, one, no, it isn't. And then two, the reason it was so large was, one, that they had made an inordinate amount of money from these lies, and two, that it would take an inordinate fine to make a dent in Trump's finances. And that's the idea of a penalty like this. You're not supposed to be able to just get away with it. We find you guilty of fraud. If you can't be made to give back all the money, you need to be able to be made to give back enough that you will say, maybe fraud isn't a great business model. And, that's not happening with this guy right now. Anyway, it would be like if they find Elon Musk $500 million, that'd be nothing to him. It's a slightly more to Trump, but not that much. Anyway, while harm certainly occurred, this decision said, it was not the cataclysmic harm that can justify nearly a $500 million award to the state, two of the judges wrote. Trump touted the judgment's dismissal in remarks to law enforcement officers in Washington, D.C. on Thursday. I had a victory today. They stole $550 million from me with a fake case, and it was overturned. It wasn't. They say this was a fake case, Trump told the group of officers in Washington, D.C. And I don't know whether this is the group of officers. I don't see any news reporting about this, but I know that yesterday afternoon, Trump was telling the news media that he was going to go out on patrol with the cops and National Guard troops in Washington, D.C. yesterday, and presumably, stage beating and arresting someone, but I haven't seen any stories generated by it, which is interesting. That I haven't. I'm sure they're out there, but they were overwhelmed by Cracker Barrel stories. Anyway, he went on, more comments. It's a terrible thing, but it's a nice victory, I mean, it's not bad, we all have our limits, but this was a terrible thing, that it was a witch hunt, and I've had more witch hunts than any human being, he added. Trump also praised the ruling as a total victory in a post on Truth Social earlier in the day. I greatly respect the fact that the court had the courage to throw out this unlawful and disgraceful decision that was hurting businesses all throughout New York State. He wrote, no, of course not. Every single dollar was thrown out, even the penalties imposed on us by the corrupt judge, one of the most overturned in history, Arthur Engoron. Trump added in his lengthy post. He also called New York Attorney General Letitia James, who brought the case against him, a political hack and incompetent. Eric Trump celebrated the ruling in a phone interview with NBC News. This is the biggest victory in the world, said the president's son, who's the executive vice president of the Trump Organization. We always knew this was going to happen. The case is totally won, and it's a big day for us. His brother, fellow executive vice president Donald Trump Jr., called the ruling a massive win in a post on Twitter. It was always a witch hunt, election interference, and a total miscarriage of justice, and even a left-leaning New York appeals court agrees, he wrote. James said in a statement that the ruling affirmed the well-supported finding of the trial court. Donald Trump, his company, and two of his children are liable for fraud. It should not be lost to history. Yet another court has ruled that the president violated the law and that our case has merit, the statement said. James said she plans to appeal the decision to the state's highest court, the Court of Appeals. I know, they got a weird system in New York. By the way, the trial court, known as the Supreme Court, and the highest court, the Court of Appeals. Upside down from the federal system of naming anyway. The 323-page ruling by the mid-level appeals court, contains 3 separate opinions from 5 judges on the panel and shows that they were deeply divided. I mean, you should never take the word of a Trump when they say total victory. And of course, I'll put it this way. They really should have put this, first of all, up top. They should have pointed out the judges didn't say you're not guilty of the fraud. They said the fine is too big. You are guilty of the fraud. You should be fined some lesser amount of money, and we want to find out what amount of money that is. And between $0 and $500 million, there's a lot of room. But of course, they're lying about, the total victory. They threw out the whole thing. They said it was a fake case. No, not at all. And that takes 1 page. A 323-page ruling is a hint that this is much more complicated than you think. But everything's more complicated than he thinks. Anyway, 2 of the 5 judges were in favor of upholding the fraud finding, but dismissing the financial penalties. I don't know whether they mean entirely or in part. 2 of the judges were in favor of ordering a new trial. They weren't sure about this outcome. And 1 of the judges would have dismissed the case. In a highly unusual move, the 2 judges who had wanted a new trial, John Higgett and is this Ynet Rosado? It's Linet, like LL, the double L's in Spanish being that Y sound. Ynet Rosado. Anyway, those 2 judges signed off on the opinion by judges who upheld the fraud finding in order to end the stalemate on the court and allow the parties to take their case to the Court of Appeals. You see what's happening here? These 2 judges actually, they thought the whole thing needed to be tried all over again. And then there was 1 judge that said, oh, it should have been dismissed outright the first time. And then there was 2 judges that said, no, they got the right verdict. They just got the wrong number. But they were stuck, I guess. And because there were 3 opinions among 5 of them, they couldn't quite figure out what the ruling would stand for. And it wasn't clear whether anybody who had any disagreements with these findings could get it to the appeals court unless there was some clarity on what the outcome was. So, in a highly unusual move, the 2 judges who wanted a new trial signed off on the opinion by the judge who had said, yeah, the trial was fine, just the fine was wrong. And they said, oh, we'll agree with that guy, not the dismissal guy. So now there's 3 judges out of 5 saying trial was fine, number is wrong. That's the holding. So now you can go to the Court of Appeals. Under the truly extraordinary circumstances here, where none of the writings enjoys the support of a majority, we are moved to take this action to permit this panel to arrive at a decision, Higgett wrote, explaining why he and Rosado effectively sided with Justices Peter Moulton and Diane Renwick, even though they disagreed with much of their decision. Okay, so now it's 4 out of the 5, actually, who say everything's fine from the trial. But they're saying, wink, wink, 2 of us don't. A remarkable situation has necessitated a remarkable solution, Higgett wrote. The appeal had been fully submitted for almost a year. Some members of the panel had expressed concern with the size of the judgment at a hearing in the appeal last September, with one calling it troubling. Trump's attorneys had contended that he shouldn't have to pay anything in damages, and that the businesses he was accused of defrauding were delighted with these transactions and benefited enormously from them. They faulted the judge for not relying on their client's expertise in valuing properties and alleged that some of the discrepancies the judge pointed to were outside the statute of limitations for the case and shouldn't have been used. Engoron handed down his judgment against Trump in early 2024 after finding he and his companies had engaged in repeated and persistent fraud. The award came after a months-long trial that included testimony from the then former and now current president. The case centered on allegations from James's office that Trump lied to banks and insurers by both overvaluing and undervaluing his assets when it was to his benefit, exaggerating his net worth to the tune of billions of dollars. The scheme enabled Trump to obtain bank loans and insurance policies at rates that he otherwise wouldn't have been entitled to, and the result was that he reaped hundreds of millions of dollars in ill-gotten gains, James's office said. That's true. The fact that the partners in those business were supposedly delighted, they were delighted that they made money on transactions with him, but they should have made much more because he should have been paying higher interest rates or making larger down payments or whatever. And in other words, it's the same thing that he now accuses other Democrats of doing. You lied about the nature of this purchase and the finances underlying them so that you could get yourself a better deal on it. Trump maintained his financial statements were conservative, and he repeatedly alleged that the Democratic Attorney General's case was politically motivated, which, by the way, everybody else is now doing against him, as it turns out. Engoron summarized Trump's defense as claiming that the documents do not say what they say, that there is no such thing as objective value, and that essentially the court should not believe its own eyes. He also chided Trump and his companies for not taking any responsibility for their actions. Their complete lack of contrition and remorse borders on pathological. We may remember all of this stuff, and I guess we don't really need to recap the case, but there you have it. By the way, it says down at the bottom, Trump is also appealing two other judgments totaling about $90 million after writer E. Jean Carroll successfully sued him for allegedly sexually abusing and defaming her. Trump has denied the allegations in both of her lawsuits, and on and on and on ad infinitum. So he's appealing everything, and as president, he's also leaning on people. Please do see the case my way and dismiss this, or else I'll cut off all federal funds for your state, essentially, is now the threat he's making anywhere and everywhere. All right. Let's see. I got to run down the list here of news of the day here before we get to any of the long reads. New news from out of New Jersey, where we spent some considerable time, a week or two ago, explaining the weird maneuver that the Trump Justice Department was taking to try to keep Alina Habba and also, what's his name? John, how come I can never remember his name, except for the fact that he's the third /III. It starts with an S, right? But the U.S. Attorney, I gotta look it up, for the Northern District of New York is John Sarcone. There he is, John A. Sarcone, III, as they say. But he may be subject to this same treatment now. We got to find out and see whether there's anybody smart and going to bring us a case that will do this. Here's what came out of New Jersey yesterday, according to ABC News. Judge rules Alina Habba unlawfully serving as U.S. Attorney for New Jersey. You may recall that her time was up as interim U.S. Attorney, and that they tried then to name her as acting U.S. Attorney through a series of weird moves in which they elevated the first assistant U.S. Attorney for New Jersey to the acting job, and then named Alina Habba, after having her commission expire as interim U.S. Attorney, named her first assistant U.S. Attorney for New Jersey, and then fired the person that they had just promoted through the Federal Vacancies Act, creating another vacancy, and then saying, oh, well, under these circumstances, when there's a vacancy at the U.S. Attorney's office, the first assistant becomes U.S. Attorney, or at least becomes acting U.S. Attorney. And golly, if it's not Alina Habba for some strange reason, and they put her in and installed her and let her keep going. And they did the same thing, I think, for Sarcone as well. Anyway, I don't remember whether it was exactly the same, but we should look into it because now there are implications. Trump, the subheader of this story says, had named Habba, his former defense lawyer, as New Jersey's interim U.S. Attorney. ABC News reporters on this story are Alexander Malin, Aaron Katersky, and Peter Charalambous. Oh my goodness. Charalambous. Charalambous. Maybe. I hope so. And he's the on-screen guy, I think, on this one too, according to the video. Okay, sorry about that, Peter. If I listen to the video, I imagine you'll say your name at the end, what your name is and where you're reporting from. A federal judge in New Jersey on Thursday ruled that Alina Habba is not lawfully serving as the U.S. Attorney overseeing federal prosecutions in the state, dealing a blow to efforts by the Trump administration to maneuver its hand-picked appointees into acting roles as at prosecuting offices around the country. So probably applicable to Sarcone and probably many others. Do you know anything about that happening for U.S. attorneys or interim or acting in your area? Let us know, because everybody thinks these are isolated stories, and it might be a very large national story if you get them all together. Anyway, after reviewing several issues of first impression, the court concludes that Ms. Habba has exercised the functions and duties of the Office of the United States Attorney for the District of New Jersey without lawful authority since July 1st, 2025, said Judge Matthew Brann, the Chief District Judge for the Middle District of Pennsylvania, in a 77-page order on Thursday. Okay, we'll see whether that lasts or whether he's thrown out of the country or people pelt his home with peg games from Cracker Barrel or something like that. Brand's order followed a legal challenge brought against Haba's appointment by 3 separate criminal defendants who have been charged in the District of New Jersey. And it's not clear to me immediately how it is that this case ended up in front of a district judge for the Middle District of Pennsylvania, but do keep in mind that the geography of the area is such that there's a lot of overlap in cases in southern New Jersey with the Philadelphia area, and in northern New Jersey, of course, with the New York area. You get the idea of why. That is, if you look at the map, you'll figure it out. Okay. While Judge Brand declined to grant the defendants' request that their cases be dismissed outright because of Haba's apparent unlawful service in the office, he said Haba is disqualified from participating in any of their cases moving forward, as well as any ongoing cases in the office. The executive branch has perpetuated Alina Haba's appointment to act as the United States Attorney for the District of New Jersey through a novel series of legal and personnel moves, Judge Brand wrote. We spent a long time explaining those when it happened. Along the way, it has disagreed with the judges of the United States District Court for the District of New Jersey and criminal defendants in that district about who should or may lead the office. Faced with the questions of whether Ms. Haba is lawfully performing the functions and duties of the Office of the United States Attorney for the District of New Jersey, I conclude that she is not, wrote Brand. I got to look at the entirety of the opinion, and it's also very long, which indicates that it is rather complex as well. Some 77 pages or so. It really is fascinating reading, and it is something you can sit down and read on your own if you really want to put some time into it. And it's not even that much time compared to like a 323 page ruling, let's say. But it is fascinating and a great example. Those of you who are not trained lawyers might find it really interesting one of these days to step through these things and just to see how careful real judges are and have to be in laying out their decisions. Like, basically, this is a chronological case. When was she appointed? And did they tick all the right boxes on the checklist to get somebody appointed? No, they didn't. You and I would do it in about 2 pages. But this is such a thorough examination, like most of these rulings are. Like, what are the rules of interpretation that we use to arrive at the conclusion that, yes, it's a valid thing to do to look at the chronology? Well, these are the judicial canons that we consider, the canons of construction of the law, and which body of law do we look to? It's all very thorough and very interesting. It would take, more than a whole show to go through it, though. Anyway, Trump, as you know, named Haba, one of his former personal attorneys, as New Jersey's interim U.S. attorney in March. But after the Senate did not take up her confirmation before the end of her 120-day interim term, a panel of federal judges last month appointed Assistant U.S. Attorney Desiree Lee Grace to the permanent U.S. Attorney spot. Just hours later, the Justice Department fired Grace, after which the White House withdrew Haba's nomination in a procedural move that allowed her to continue as the acting U.S. Attorney for the state. The Justice Department is expected to quickly appeal Judge Brand's decision, which could have impacts on multiple other districts where the administration has similarly maneuvered to extend the tenures of several appointees. We know about one, Northern District of New York. Brand has stayed the impact of his order while the appeals court process plays out. So once again, watching the judge do things so carefully, not only in the decision and explaining why he's made the decision and what the basis is for his having the right to issue this decision, what the method of interpretation of the various statutes will they use, all of that. And then on top of it all, yes, I'm willing to stay the impact of my decision pending appeal. So really just walking on eggshells like they would around anybody. It's not just around Trump, but I guess it's a little extra eggshells around Trump just to be safe. Anyway, I found that very interesting, and that's a new development in a case or a story that we followed relatively closely. Anna Bauer was the reporter on social media who I saw bring this to our attention first, and she provides a link to the full reasoning, the full opinion. And again, I recommend it if you have any interest at all in just seeing how these things work. How can you take a decision that's so obvious on its face and could be done in 5 pages or less and extend it to 77? What are the things that judges have to consider? And imagine, by the way, considering all those things and taking 77 pages to render this decision and still saying, but just in case I'm wrong, I'll stay the decision pending appeal, because somebody else now has to do a 77-page appeal of their own. Anyway. All right. This was, let's see, that is real small bore. Maybe we can do this story, a quick hit. CNN had a story. I missed the fact that they were even considering this, but it is very Trumpy to do. Apparently, at some point, Trump told everybody, he says this all the time, I'm going to sign an executive order. I'm about to do it. I'm going to do it. And it's going to be so great and so beautiful and whatever pipe dream he might have. Apparently, at some point, he threatened to sign an executive order to punish flag burners. Now, it might occur to you at some point, hey, haven't we been through the courts on the flag burning thing, and hasn't the Supreme Court found that it's a protected First Amendment expression? Yes. So what is Trump talking about? He's talking about, I don't care, the court's wrong, I want to punish people. So what was he going to do? He was going to sign an executive order directing the Justice Department that if they find somebody, burning a flag, but they can't charge them for flag burning because of the Supreme Court, that they should use all possible resources and methods at their disposal to find something else to charge them with so that you can bring somebody to court. They burned the flag. Well, let's bring them to court for something else because we can't bring them to court strictly for burning the flag. And everybody said, hey, that's dangerous and stupid and counter to the whole spirit of the ruling, and you're going to end up getting that stuff thrown out anyway, and why are you bothering with this, and don't you have important things to do? Well, as it turns out, I guess somebody must have convinced them that they did, because the headline of the CNN piece, Trump no longer expected to sign executive order to punish those who burn American flags. That's pretty cool. He tacoed out on that one for whatever reason, and I don't know. We'll see if we in this next minute do I decide whether it's important to tell you the reasoning or not. Be right back. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Of course, that's right. I'll let you finish the sentence for me. Now you can co-host the show. We should be doing that, by the way. Raffling off maybe the right to co-host the show one day. Anybody interested in that? I don't know. We'll put it at about $1 million to do that. I guess. I don't know. I'm not certain what price point we would put at that one. But to return to the very brief story, I think we got the gist of the story. I reviewed it. It's only a little blurb, essentially, in CNN. There's not much more to it except that they asked some officials, hey, how come he's not going to sign this thing? And they said, no reason, no comment on that. And it's unclear, they say, if the order will be signed at some later date. Like they might decide to pretend we didn't want to sign it because he had a golf game, not because we thought we were wrong about this thing and it was totally illegal or unconstitutional to try to do this. But in case you were looking for the root of this, it was a 1989 Supreme Court ruling determining that burning the American flag in political protest is protected under the First Amendment. But they were going to do something anyway. They were not expected to try in their order to outright criminalize the act of burning the flag. Instead, it was expected to direct Attorney General Pam Bondi to review cases where the flag had been set on fire and determine whether charges could be brought under existing laws. Any other charges, like public endangerment by lighting something on fire, something like that. I don't know. But pollution, some sort of EPA violation. I don't know. But that was the idea. Come up with something else. And that was not likely to survive review. To an executive order that specifically says drum up some charges on some other kind and get them on something else because the First Amendment is getting in the way of the thing I want to prosecute them for is not really going to stand up. Anyway, it was really a story of him tacoing out on something. And I guess it's got a companion piece In Roll Call, they report under the headline, White House changes course, taco. White House changes course after Trump vows executive order to end mail-in voting. That was the outrage of the day just the other day. And you remember that Trump spent most of his post-fake Putin fake summit, real Putin fake summit, press tour insisting, because he couldn't really remember what Putin had said or didn't understand what Putin said or didn't want to tell anybody what Putin actually said. And so he said, even though our meeting was only 15 minutes long or whatever, Putin spent the whole time telling me how I was right about the 2020 election. Sure, I'm sure he did. Anyway, he came out of it also saying, and Putin told me mail-in voting is such a scam. We can't have mail-in voting, and that's why you got to get rid of it. So I'm going to sign an executive order to get rid of mail-in voting. And everybody said, you can't, you shouldn't, and you can't, and it's a matter for the states, and da-da-da, and analyzing it to death as we usually do. It's the states' right to conduct their elections any way they want. There is no role for the federal government and all of this. Anyway, one or all of those reasons, along with who knows what else, ran out of ketchup. I don't know. The White House said, you know what, we're going to taco out of this one for the time being. The president resorting to desperate schemes to cling to power, was the quote attributed to Senator Alex Padilla as the subheader for this piece. This is John T. Bennett reporting for Roll Call. And, it reads like this. The White House has abruptly altered course, taco, on President Donald Trump's vow to have an elite legal team craft an executive order that would end mail-in voting, with a top aide saying the administration would instead forge a legislative path. We'll see about that. Trump has railed against the practice most of his political career, ramping up his lambasting of the practice during and after his unsuccessful 2020 re-election bid. He began the week with an early morning vow to, as he wrote Monday in a 7:17 a.m. social media post, lead a movement to get rid of mail-in ballots. Those are the caps. But his promised movement, as he described it, and I don't doubt that at 7:17 a.m. while he was typing on social media, there was a movement going on. There was a movement afoot, to be sure. But, there's only so much you can report about that one before making people ill. But his promised movement, as he described it, would not stop there. The president wrote that the effort would also target highly inaccurate, very expensive, and seriously controversial voting machines, which cost 10 times more than accurate and sophisticated watermark paper, which is faster and leaves no doubt at the end of the evening as to who won and who lost the election. None of that makes any sense, as you know. Trump was asked about his effort to end mail-in voting and rid the election process of voting machines later Monday during a media availability at the Oval Office. We're going to start with an executive order that's being written right now by the best lawyers in the country to end mail-in ballots because they're corrupt, he told reporters. But while White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt on Tuesday, just over 24 hours later, signaled that the administration had ditched the president's approach, the White House continues to work on this. And when Congress comes back to Washington, I'm sure there will be many discussions with our friends on Capitol Hill and also our friends in the state legislatures across the country, which is where this has to be done, to ensure that we're protecting the integrity of the vote for the American people, she said. And I think Republicans generally and the president generally wants to make it easier for Americans to vote and harder for people to cheat in our elections. I don't think so. Upside down and backwards. I suppose they will be, in fact, prevailing on state legislatures where there is Republican control to change the laws in their state. And they can do this. And they would be empowered, I guess, to get rid of mail-in balloting, although it's extraordinarily popular in those states. So I don't know whether they're really going to do it. They might come up with some sort of weird limitation on it and just say, you can still vote by mail if you're a Republican, but not if you're a Democrat. And can we find a way to make that legal? Go do that. On the federal level, they probably would say they'd be looking to withhold federal voting assistance grants and funding to the states if you don't pass a law restricting mail-in ballots, something like that. Asked what changed so quickly and whether Trump had received a legal ruling from within the administration that his office lacked the authority to make such a dramatic elections change, a White House spokesman merely lobbed accusations at Democrats and repeated Trump's 2024 campaign platform on the issue. At least they described it that way. You want to hear what that sounded like? It was Harrison Fields in an email. Democrats have eroded faith in our election with reckless laws such as unfettered mail-in voting, illegal changing laws to benefit their voters, and slow walking the counting of votes far past Election Day, that kind of stuff. Trump is Superman and should be obeyed in all things, that kind of thing. Trump could still sign an executive order on the matter, but Leavitt's Tuesday answer signaled that major changes would need to come legislatively. And then, of course, they cover all the false claims that he makes about this stuff. Trump used a pair of false claims to support his claim, another one, that such a movement is needed in the United States. We are now the only country in the world that uses mail-in voting, and obviously that's not true. All others gave it up because of the massive voter fraud encountered, he wrote on Truth Social, which he owns. We will begin this effort, lots of caps here, which will be all caps, in fact, which will be strongly opposed by the Democrats because they cheat at levels never seen before by signing an executive order to help bring honesty to the 2026 midterm elections. Remember, the states are merely an agent for the federal government in counting and tabulating the votes. Nope, upside down and backwards, just absolutely wrong. But 33 countries, including the United States, allow some form of mail-in balloting, according to data compiled by the International Institute for Democracy and Electoral Assistance. That includes a dozen that allow the practice for all voters, including the U.S., Canada, Germany, Iceland, New Zealand, Poland, and the United Kingdom. Another 21 allow mail-in voting for some voters. That'd include Australia, France, Greenland, Ireland, India, Japan, the Netherlands, and Zimbabwe, according to International IDEA. That's the Institute for Democracy and Electoral Assistance, IDEA. The president, who has uttered and posted tens of thousands of false and misleading statements since taking office for the first time in January of 2017, also falsely posted that the sitting president and federal government administer elections in the United States. No. That work is carried out by state and local governments. When a reporter during a Tuesday briefing noted that in a question to Leavitt, she did not, as she does on many on-camera queries, fire back a pointed retort or claim that a reporter was incorrect. Okay. I don't know why she got honest in that situation. After telling reporters that the administration would work with Congress and state lawmakers rather than pursue Trump's promised executive order, she contended it was quite mind-boggling that the Democrat Party could stand in opposition to common sense. He wants to ensure election integrity. There were great efforts that were made in 2024, she said, referring to Trump, but I can assure you this is a priority for the president. Trump's initial social media movement pledge came after he, on Friday, told Fox News commentator Sean Hannity that Russian President Vladimir Putin had brought up America's mail-in balloting during a summit on the Ukraine conflict while they were in Alaska. Senate Rules and Administration Committee ranking member Alex Padilla said on Monday statement that the president was now taking advice on voter suppression from a murderous dictator who rigs elections, jails political opponents, and persecutes dissent. I guess so. In many U.S. states, the Secretary of State oversees elections. I don't know why that is included parenthetically here in this paragraph, but okay. The California Democrat contended that Trump's sudden push for a movement was a look inside his mind, such as it is. Trump knows the MAGA agenda is unpopular, raising your grocery prices and hiking up your healthcare premiums, all while handing out tax breaks to billionaires. So he's resorting to desperate schemes to cling to power. Even his preferred news outlets, Newsmax and Fox News, have been forced to answer for pushing conspiracies about voting machines. They admitted what Trump won't. He lost the 2020 election. Yes. Everything has shifted now because of ad movement. And that mail-in voting is secure. Fortunately, Trump doesn't have the power to unilaterally end mail-in voting, but Congress must stand up for free and fair elections as he continues his assault on our democracy. Trump has sent mixed signals for months about whether he could try to seek a constitutionally questionable third term. For instance, during an August 5th interview with CNBC, he said he would probably not run again, but seconds later he revealed, "I'd like to run," adding, "I have the best poll numbers I've ever had." Democrats have had the advantage in mail-in balloting. For instance, it says, during the 2024 election cycle, 65.7 million mail ballots were requested, and among that number, 44% were requested by registered Democrats, with 29% requested by Republicans and 27% by otherwise registered voters, according to data analyzed by TargetSmart for NBC News. That was only marginally helpful, but there you have it. At least they justified their statement in saying that there was some advantage involved for Democrats. Okay. I feel like there was something else that I read earlier and said, oh, there's something else in my, not pocket anymore, but Instapaper, waiting for discussion. Yeah, that's right. About the targeting list. But in fact, it wasn't so much about them keeping a target list as the opposite, sort of. All right. Well, this one has, there's a million things to get to. So I don't know that we're going to do the long read thing. I was thinking about doing the long read thing on Ruth Marcus's profile of Pam Bondi, but I don't think we're going to be able to get through all of that, but maybe I'll put it in the roundup again for you to read over the weekend on your own. It is of some interest. Pam Bondi sucks. I mean, long story short, Pam Bondi, very bad. Wow, much illegal. Something like that. Not a huge Ruth Marcus fan, but I think, whatever. I was going to read it in the spirit of when you've lost Ruth Marcus. I mean, she's not a conservative, but she's one of those, maybe more Democratic leaning commentators, but who's always overly cautious about things. Democrats are going to get out over their skis if they say that Republicans are doing something wrong here, but she's willing to finally say Pam Bondi is doing wrong here. So I thought it might be interesting to share. Anyway, a different story instead, and we'll skip around a little bit more, and we'll do a bigger sampling than we usually do on a Friday. This is from Axios. Do I have access to this Axios article in full on the web or what? It's a scoop, so you have to be careful about scoops. Sometimes they protect them a little more than others. Mike Allen has this scoop. White House loyalty rating for companies. It's not what I was thinking of. I was thinking of the enemies list, and I'm sure there's still something parked, probably still in pocket, about Kash Patel and his enemies list that we could go back to. But this is another interesting and weird development about lists. Anyway, loyalty ratings for companies. What's going on here? I'm going to have to read it, I think, out of the Instapaper version. But the West Wing has created a scorecard that rates 553 companies and trade associations on how hard they worked to support and promote President Trump's one big beautiful bill, a senior White House official tells Axios. Wow, that's not great. Why it matters, their stupid formulation of all this stuff. Trump works transactionally, and companies have rushed to pay demonstrative homage. Now, senior aides will have data to consult when considering corporate requests. The unusual spreadsheet fits this administration's proclivity for micromanaging companies and administering loyalty tests. Yes, it does. And with Trump proposing micromanagement of more companies every day, sometimes at his personal direction, it's a worrisome development. Factors in the rating include social media posts, press releases, video testimonials, peg games and logo design, I would add, ads, attendance at White House events, and other engagement related to OB3, as the mega bill is known internally. One big, beautiful bill, three Bs there. All right. The organization's support is ranked as strong, moderate, or low, Axios has learned that examples of good partners on the White House list include Uber, DoorDash, United, Delta, AT&T, Cisco, Airlines for America, I'm not certain what that is, I guess a trade group, and the Steel Manufacturers Association. Okay, so they're on the good list, and I don't know if there is a naughty list like Santa Claus for this one. How does it work? The data, which is being circulated to White House senior staff, will be used as a reality check when someone from K Street calls, lobbyists, and says, for instance, that they, quote, love to catch up, was so great working with you to pass the one big beautiful bill, which is, their subtle way of saying we want to ask you for a new favor, I guess. The ranking helps us see who really goes out and helps versus those who just come in and pay lip service, the official said. Separately, a running list on the White House website tracks announcements of Trump effect investments in U.S. manufacturing, production, and innovation. When he says there's going to be millions of dollars invested in whatever industry because of the things I said, if somebody makes one of those investments, they get a gold star, I guess. What's next? We're told this is an evolving document with the organization's engagement on other presidential initiatives to be added. So I guess you also get gold star for, settling lawsuits that he files against you for several $1 million. If you stuff the money in his pocket, you get on the good list. If groups and companies want to start advocating more now for the tax bill or additional administration priorities, we will take that into account in our grading, the official said. You can change our grade by being more pro-Trump. Zoom in. Companies on the White House good list took a variety of approaches to supporting the mega bill, often singling out specific benefits for their industry. DoorDash, deliverer, I guess. Malachi Krisky, maybe, I don't know, of Wisconsin, this is really micro, isn't it? Like a DoorDash delivery driver from Ripon, Wisconsin, R-I-P-O-N. Do they say it in any other weird way? How sometimes, well, anyway. Malachi wore a red DoorDash mom t-shirt as she stood behind President Trump at a White House event promoting the bill the week before the final votes. She later plugged the no tax on tips provision in a Fox News digital interview. No tax on tips is now law, Uber cheered on a blog for drivers. No tax on tips, first proposed by President Trump during his 2024 presidential campaign, is a proposal to change how tips are taxed. Do you think? Is that really? Are you sure? Now that this has become law, you won't pay federal income taxes on your tips that are reported to the IRS on a 1099 form. Chuck Robbins, CEO of Cisco, who's also chair of the Business Roundtable, the association of top U.S. CEOs, posted on Twitter, encouraged by the House reconciliation package's corporate tax provisions by preserving a competitive rate, retaining FDII, and restoring immediate R&D expensing. The bill will strengthen America's pro-growth tax system, allowing U.S. companies to better innovate and invest at home. I guess that gets you a gold star, too. AT&T announced plans to more quickly build fiber infrastructure thanks to pro-investment policies in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act passed by Congress. Airlines for America, which represents major U.S. airlines, in case you didn't guess, issued a statement saying it strongly supports the One Big Beautiful Bill Act and applauds the inclusion of a critical investment of $12.5 billion in modernizing the Federal Aviation Administration's air traffic facilities, systems, and infrastructure. So everybody gets to give a targeted reason for cheering for the bill, I guess. United and Delta issued statements of support for the air traffic provision. The Steel Manufacturers Association said the bill will allow manufacturers to buy new equipment, further their lead in research and development, raise wages, and improve employee benefits. Most importantly, this legislation will allow our members to keep all the money. Create more jobs, What did I say? Right. Okay. Is there more with this? I guess so. In an instant, a company can get caught in the crosshairs of a Truth Social post from President Trump, and suddenly that business is on the hook for changing its flagship product, brand name, supply chain, Or else, I think this is a different article, actually. This is what to do when you're a Trump target. Okay. We must have moved on to a different article here, or maybe this is a promo for a related piece. I can't tell exactly because I'm reading it in the Instapaper format, which gets rid of all the visual clues about when the story has ended and you've moved into something else. All right. So now I guess back to the other things that I socked away for this flood of new stories here. Let's see. We did this one. That was the tacoing on the executive orders. Back to a story that we spent a lot of time yesterday discussing the Bill Pulte thing at Fannie Mae and how and why he is spending his time targeting Democrats who are on the Trump enemies list and trying to nail them with mortgage fraud, or actually what they call, I think, occupancy fraud in the technical terms. Charges. In other words, when buying a second, third vacation rental home, whatever, there are benefits, tax benefits and financial benefits for buyers who intend to make it their primary residence. They won't want to get in the way of everybody having a home, and there are certain tax breaks that go along with this. Plus, of course, there's an advantage in consideration of mortgage lending that comes along with it. We described it yesterday. It basically stems from, if it's your primary home, you're definitely going to make the payments on it. Whereas if it's an investment property, if it goes south, some people will just abandon the payments on it and say, let it go into foreclosure. I don't care. Anyway, but there's lots of reasons why people buy additional homes, investments, vacation properties, turning them into Airbnbs, what have you. But that Bill Pulte was, I thought, specially positioned to weaponize this practice. That is, to weaponize the use of Fannie Mae by using it to search for data on specific targets. If a prominent Democrat is being targeted, chances are somebody who's risen to the level to make it to Trump's enemies list has been successful enough in life that they might have at some point purchased a second home, a vacation home, or just a second home in general. Like members of Congress do that all the time because they maintain residence at home in their home state. And if they're long enough serving, probably maintain a residence in D.C. too, instead of paying rent the whole time. But yeah, so you can probably find that with just about any Democrat that would rise to the level that you'd be targeting them. Yeah, I mean, you'll find it with Republicans too, but they're just not going to look at the Republicans. So one, that's true. Two, Bill Pulte knows it because the Pulte family has made, billions of dollars as home builders, encouraging this practice and just winking at everybody and saying, just check the box if it makes it easier for you to close the deal, because no one's ever going to look. No one cares. You're nobody. You're a schmo. And even if you're a relatively prominent person, nobody's going to be looking. How will they know to look at whether or not you own a second property and then actually get a hold of the documents and then review the documents? And will they be able to prove that this isn't your primary residence? You're years away from being held liable for this. So just go ahead and do it. We make money. You keep money. Everyone's happy. No one will ever be any the wiser. And Pulte knows this, and his businesses have encouraged this since forever because it makes him a ton of money. You know what? It's not dissimilar from the claim that Trump is making in his New York mortgage fraud case. Why wouldn't it be similar, right? He says, actually, there's no victims in this because the banks and insurance companies are delighted with the transactions. They make money. Well, these banks and these home sellers, home builders, and the insurance companies that go along with all of these purchases also are delighted in making money and all this because the deals go through and they go through faster. They don't care that you're cheating the government because that liability rests with you anyway. Although apparently they can get in trouble if they know that this is, they have reason to believe that this isn't your primary residence. Apparently they can bring charges against them, but they never do. So that's why they wink at you and tell you go ahead and do it. And Bill Pulte knows it because that's how his family made most of its money, is through home building. I'm not saying most of their money came from this fraud. I'm just saying they're frequent shoppers at this particular fraud mall, if you know what I mean. All right. But can they up their game? Could they be using new tools and weaponize this information even more strongly? And the answer, of course, is yes. And you might even have a pretty good guess already at how they would do it. I'll hint at it, and then we'll take a quick break and then come back and read you the full story. But suffice to say, well, you've probably already guessed. How could you come up with so much information on so many people that you can target 3 different Democratic enemies in the same week or so? And, well, one is simply if you're interested in helping out the president and looking like a good attack dog, you'll just say, who's he mad at? Go find out if that person has any second houses. Or, in the age of DOGE and the overuse of AI products, couldn't you put a computer AI agent to work rooting things out to start trouble with people who aren't even on the enemies list yet? Yes. Hi, everybody. It's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and Patreon.com, Patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, Patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back, everyone, to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. By the way, before I jump into this, I wanted to go back and mention that Justice had sent me a note on the CEO of Cracker Barrel. And you may remember that I said, I don't know, somebody was saying on social media somewhere, oh, yeah, well, Cracker Barrel has a new CEO. Maybe not new. And she's a black woman. Maybe not black. Maybe not a woman. I don't know. I really don't know anything about it. And it sounds like something that's garbage and they would make up and or get wrong. And as it turns out, it's at least wrong. So he sent me a link to what happened to it? I don't know. A link to the Cracker Barrel something page of some kind. I don't know. I'll have to click on it again. I thought it would be. Here it is. It's on the at investor.crackerbarrel.com, and I don't know what that is. But anyway, Julie Fels Massino is by coding appears to be a woman, but a white one at that. I don't know. I don't want to assume too much, but doesn't look to me like she's a black woman. And that's the sort of thing that, MAGA would, of course, take a look at the picture and say, this is what she is. And, to some extent, you can usually make that guess pretty well. But anyway, what can I tell you? Long history. Pretty experienced, I think, and not all that new necessarily as Cracker Barrel CEO. Let's see. President and CEO from July 2023 on. Okay. So whatever, a whole recitation of her background. Executive, seasoned executive. I don't know whether that has anything to do with what they're complaining about or not, but just by way of background, it doesn't appear to be the case that, well, she's black and so therefore. So who knows? Even less reason to come up with some excuse for them to have a foundation for their anger. I don't even know why I bother. Anyway, having cleared that up, I wanted to go back to the Pulte situation and Bill Pulte at Fannie Mae targeting Democrats for accusations of mortgage fraud. And I found this article on a website called Daylight AML. It says for mortgage lenders. It's almost like a tagline there. I don't know anything about this place. I don't know anything about this guy. But if you read the About section, you find out that, well, there's a mission statement here. And then a picture of presumably the guy who writes this website, although they don't actually say either what his name is or that this is a picture of that person. Like usually there's a caption. It's very, it's a nice corporate headshot, and he's smiling confidently with crossed arms in his blue blazer. No tie on this guy. Graying, hair and whatever. But there's a framed maybe diploma or certificate of some kind blurred out in the background, all of which screams, white guy, gray hair, blue blazer, framed diploma looking thing. Trust me. Why not? What's the mission statement? At Daylight AML, we provide best-in-class BSA/AML compliance to mortgage lenders. Well, it's good to know that it's best-in-class. What is BSA/AML? I had to look it up because I'm not a banker, but it makes sense. BSA, not Boy Scouts of America. They don't even call themselves that anymore. Scouting America now. Bank Secrecy Act, AML, anti-money laundering. Okay. Money laundering. Now you're talking. At Daylight AML, anti-money laundering, we provide the best-in-class Bank Secrecy Act / anti-money laundering compliance to mortgage lenders. To help detect and prevent financial crimes, our course, which they sell, focuses on the risks inherent in real estate lending. Oh no. Risks? Real estate lending? Donald Trump? You're kidding. Our course is designed to cover all required BSA/AML compliance subjects while doing it from a lender's perspective. We enable our clients to stay ahead of regulatory changes and to proactively address emerging risks. You get the idea. That's who this is for. Learn about my course. That's the button you can press, which might tell you, like, who is when we say my course? Who are you, sir? And why do you have a course? And why should I take it? Does it say anywhere? Not here, although it says you can click here to schedule a call with Bob below, and presumably Bob is that guy. Here we are. Meet your instructor. Hi, I'm Bob Simpson. I built this course specifically for banks, credit unions, and mortgage lenders based on real-life experience, not AI or chat content. So he's worked on this recently. With 20-plus years in mortgage fraud investigations, thousands of cases, and credentials as a lawyer, former loan officer, and certified AML specialist, AML, anti-money laundering, with, I guess, an accreditation here, ACAMS. I don't know what that stands for, but I bet that's maybe that's the certificate/diploma thing on the wall behind him. I bring unmatched insight to your training, so you get the idea. Who is this guy? What is his expertise in? And why are we listening to him talk about the Pulte Palantir project, something he wrote up in early July of this year. July 2nd, 2025, illustrated with a picture of an octopus, interestingly enough, tentacles, I guess, everywhere. Fannie Mae's, and that's where Bill Pulte is, right? Fannie Mae's new AI-powered crime detection unit by Bob Simpson, Esquire, CAMS. All right. Introduction. He tells us by way of introduction, Fannie Mae has launched an AI-powered crime detection unit in partnership with Palantir Technologies. I was going to say dramatic music for this, but the big pause was because my finger was actually over the button for the sad trombone button, which is also appropriate in announcing this is from Palantir Technologies. And isn't Palantir Technologies, a very familiar name, And I got to look it up on Wikipedia to be sure I understand the ownership structure correctly. Palantir Technologies, publicly traded in case you want to get in on the action. And you should. They're a high, I mean, you shouldn't give them your money, but they're a high growth. You'll make a lot of money being evil. Publicly traded company specializing in software platforms for data mining. Headquartered in Denver, Colorado. It was founded in 2003 by 3 people I don't think I know anything about, although maybe Alex Karp rings a bell. But number 1 on the list, Peter Thiel. And he gets horror dramatic because he's kind of a vampire. So yes, Peter Thiel is involved with Bill Pulte in his effort to mechanize the weaponry being used against Democrats from the mortgage lending databases in America. So there you go. Fannie Mae has launched an AI-powered crime detection unit in partnership with Peter Thiel's Palantir Technologies to achieve what FHFA Fannie Freddie chief Bill Pulte has called, quote, something big on mortgage fraud. Something big. I'm not sure what, but something. Targeting Democrats is the answer. Fannie Mae, we all know, is the grande dame of American housing, less known as Palantir Technologies. It describes itself as, quote, bringing the right data to the people who need it, allowing them to make data-driven decisions. That is a bold statement, sir. Bringing data to people who need it so that they can make data-driven decisions. Palantir clients include some of the most secretive U.S. intelligence agencies, for one thing. They do a lot with data, and beyond that, I am unable to articulate without revealing my lack of understanding. But it's not, sir, I would suggest necessarily a lack of understanding. It's a lack of clarity from them about what they do, and it's intentional. Anyway, also, even if that wasn't their intention, if it wasn't their intention to hide what they were doing, corporate speak would hide it anyway. We bring what you do. We bring best-in-class gobbledygook to yada yada so that they can drive their woohoo decisions with, okay, you get the idea. So, with equal parts excitement and foreboding, this is what I see Palantir bringing to the mortgage fraud fight. First up, what about that right data stuff? What is the right data? Simply put, the right data for Palantir is everything. Anything short of that will hobble their ability to spot or prevent fraud. Everything means all the granular mortgage loan data, from a borrower's private data to the very public property data. Then there's macro industry data, from origination through to securitization. Then think big. There's more. Right data, occupancy misrepresentation, or occupancy fraud, as we called it the other day. Now, they take a lighter touch with it. Occupancy misrepresentation. The lion's share of fraud that Palantir and Pulte find will be occupancy fraud. So let's look at what the right data means in this context. Does he give a little explainer? Occupancy fraud, basically, that's the terminology that they are assigning to the misrepresentation of whether or not a property you're purchasing is your primary residence, whether you're misrepresenting it for tax reasons or for lending reasons, doesn't really matter, but it's frequently done because it lowers the costs for the buyer, and most people think no one's ever going to look. And they probably aren't, unless, of course, they're motivated by evil, like Bill Pulte working for Donald Trump, or assisted by AI. There would be legitimate reasons for a non-political Fannie Mae perhaps to be looking at that if they were going to crack down on it across the board. But since they're not, it's kind of less than legitimate, let's say. So anyway, yes, the lion's share of fraud that Palantir and Pulte will find will be this, occupancy fraud. It's simple and pervasive. Borrowers falsely claim that they will live in the home as a primary residence in order to qualify for lower interest rates and lower down payments. To find it, Palantir will scrape public and private data sources for the myriad of clues left when someone lies about occupancy. For example, they will check rental sites like Airbnb. It was immediately what came to mind to us yesterday, to see if the property is listed there. If the borrower registers a car, a boat, or even a plane at a different residence, they'll find that too. It will find the addresses for professional licenses, like maybe your ACAMS licensing or something like that, and voter registrations. It will scrub social media to find out where our borrower eats, banks, gets dry cleaning picked up. Which ATM does the borrower frequent? Palantir will see if the borrower owns other properties and what the values are of those other properties. It will compare square footage and then search for rental ads for any of the borrower's investment properties. Ideally, Palantir will find and report on electricity usage, trash pickup, plus the distance to golf courses or beaches. It should run a report on the commute distance between the borrower and the employer. There's all sorts of information they could be scraping for all of that. And by the way, a lot of times you're helping them. What they were saying, you thought he was joking, but where do you pick up your dry cleaning? If you're checking, back in the old days, nobody does this anymore. If you're checking in on Foursquare, let's say every time you go and run an errand, pick up Starbucks, drop off dry cleaning, go to the supermarket, go to anywhere, check in at the golf course, right? That's all information about where you're spending your time. The rules for whether or not your primary occupancy is valid has to do with how much time you spend there. There are instances in which you can plausibly claim more than one, maybe not more from one primary residence, but you might be entitled to the same sort of treatment if you split your time evenly between two locations. I think, if you spend like 90 plus days of the year someplace, you might be able to get away with it. But if you're providing all the information that tells a scraping AI computer system that I check in from Starbucks every day from New York and claim a primary residence in Florida, California, Montana, that's going to be used against you. Right now, Fannie's fraud investigators are doing most of this by hand. Now, they're directed to do it. I want you to look up, find me something on Adam Schiff, find me something on Letitia James. Simple enough. But if you want to find something on 200 members of Congress or every registered Democrat in America, it'll take AI to do it. So right now they're doing it by hand. It's not that Palantir will be any smarter, but it will be more thorough and quite a bit faster. The CEO of Fannie Mae, Priscilla Almodovar, Almodovar, was quoted in Housing Wire on May 28th that Palantir found fraud in, quote, 10 seconds. Possible, he says parenthetically, but it took our really talented investigators 60 days. Well, that's wrong. They don't need 60 days, says our author here, but they should be spending a lot more than 10 minutes verifying that the information is correct. I don't know if they're doing that. Anyway, her statement is forgivable, car salesman puffery, but her intendment, really, is valid. Palantir will be fast. Okay, I think that's probably right. Right data, asset misrepresentation. That too will be what they're looking for. Money launderers use real estate to clean dirty money. Hello, Donald Trump. How you doing? Therefore, the quality of asset documentation should be a primary concern to Palantir. At its most benign, asset statements are falsified to make someone appear richer than they are. Wow, who would ever have done that and then been found guilty of 34 counts of it? One might ask. Was that, and I've not checked, is that the 34 that we're talking about? All right, well, anyway, you found liable in New York, we know that. Of exactly that, just misrepresenting asset statements to appear richer than they are so they can get a better loan. At its most sinister, asset misrepresentation hides the sources of criminally derived proceeds. Oh my gosh, that's actually happening too. Anyway, but Palantir's data should do much more than just verify that a document is valid. It should analyze account balances with borrower profiles, check seasoning of funds and geographical red flags, and also automatically verify that grantors of gifts are related to the borrower, as required by gift letters, and bump the names of grantors up against the SDN list. I don't know if I know what that is, but let's see if we can get a quick specially designated nationals. I guess that would be a sanctioned persons list. Here we're talking about largely Russian and Russian-related money laundering, but could be from anywhere around the world, as Malaysia has showed us, as well as any innumerable country, every country in the world, probably sheltering and harboring some money laundering this way. But the Russian stuff is the stuff that's been getting the attention, and that, some allege have been making their way in and out of the pockets of the Trump family as well. But you get the idea. There's a little bit of lingo in here. Geographical red flags, that could be any number of things. The money coming from Russia, money being stowed in the Cayman Islands versus a bank in, New Jersey or something like that. Different kind of red flag. Finally, with an AI super tool like this, every recipient of cash out can be similarly screened. After all, we don't want our money to be disbursed by criminals. Asset fraud is like the caramel marbling in Ben & Jerry's salted caramel core. Okay. You dig, you'll find it. Palantir could be excellent at this. If you, like I said, apply it across the board. But they also know if you dig, anybody you want targeted, if you dig, you'll find it. If they own a second home, you'll find the stuff that you need to at least raise suspicions. Can it be used for partisan purposes? Absolutely. That's what's happening. He doesn't say so, but you need to know. Ramifications is the next section. When I was a loan originator, I had a borrower lie to me about occupancy. I gave her a cash out refinance on house A, but she used that cash to buy house B, which she promptly moved into. My QC department caught her, and then our legal department landed on her, demanding that she pay off the loan or pay it down. In the end, the rate was adjusted up, and the borrower had to go get her dad to get cash and buy down the loan amount. That's what happens if someone does review the papers and cares, right? It's not a huge deal. They settle it without necessarily charging anyone or going to court, but money has to change hands. The borrower thought it was a minor issue, but it left all of us bobbing in the wake, trying to fix a loan that was not of investment quality, right? Essentially, if you're a very rich person and you overstate or you overstate your assets and lead the bank to believe you're a very rich person, they might give you a lower interest rate because you're a lower risk. But if you're stretching by fudging your net worth and your assets, then they start to worry, can this person pay this rate? And it's reflected in a higher rate, which, they're unlikely to be able to pay because they were stretching in the first place. And now all of a sudden, somebody who looks on the surface like successful enough to have a second home, or is flipping houses, or moving up and taking on a much larger mortgage, in reality needs dad as a cosigner. Important for them to know. And of course, if you are trying to farm out that loan, well, it's not investment quality because people can't be guaranteed that they're going to get their payments because this person's stretching. You get the idea. All right. Finding fraud is like that. It's the speeding boat whose wake upsets the static equilibrium of investors, correspondents, and insurers. You have enough of them, and the investment quality of all of those loans is questionable. Well, guess what happens? 2008, collapse, etc. And what if your findings create political problems for you, like discovering that your largest producer is involved, or your largest loan producer, who's doing the most mortgage business, and that's huge to you, and they're looking the other way, right? Or political implications like, I found that my political enemies are all doing this. That's not mentioned here. In April of 2024, a top producing loan officer in New Jersey was indicted for falsifying routine loan information as pedestrian as HOA reserve statements. He and his assistant were indicted. So this is happening all over the place, right? Finding fraud in the abstract sounds like a righteous cause, but the reality is that it can be a righteous pain in the backside. And in conclusion, I checked my DNA, he tells us, through 23andMe. I did the cheek swab, and waited for weeks. And finally, I got the email. My results were ready. I logged in and was surprised with this warning. Stop. You can't unsee what you're about to see. Oh, right. Think you're Italian? Think again. Have mom's eyes? Adopted. Heir to the throne? More like the scullery maid. Like an unexpected parentage reveal on Maury Povich, dated, Palantir will uncover frauds in your loan files from which you would have preferred to remain estranged. Yes, it will be fast. Yes, it will be efficient, but it will also be heartless and right quick about it. In other words, without saying as much, he doesn't say, I don't know if he has any interest in revealing this, but I do. You will find that the House Republican Conference is rife with this issue. That Donald Trump is guilty on 25 different levels in this issue. That Bill Pulte is probably guilty of the same thing, although he doesn't usually probably need to fake things in order to get a hold of a new house. He just would have his company build it for him instead. Anyway, the point is it will be everywhere, and you'll be sorry if you apply this across the board. The actions by Pulte and Palantir uncovering mortgage frauds in all their genetic variations will demand uncomfortable action or cover up. That's possible. He doesn't say so. I do. Repurchase demands, rate recalculations, and tense investor conversations. I'm for it, but a word of advice, don't plug this system in without bracing yourself. You may be adopted. That's an interesting metaphor for all of this. Well closed. Well done, Bob Simpson. I got more questions that will arise over the weekend about this, but this is something I think you need to know and understand. And you will see more such charges, and you'll see Bill Pulte's name pop up again and again making those charges. And you need to know that this can be manufactured against just about anyone, but that for some strange reason, they're only manufacturing it against Democrats, even though, as I told you yesterday, the same case lies as against Ken Paxton, among others. And like I said, anybody of any prominence who you have reason to believe might in fact own more than one property, about a 75% chance that you can turn something up through a system like this. And Peter Thiel knows it. And that's his compromat that he has against everybody else. So just something to think about if you think you're going to weed him out of things. All right. One more story that I definitely have to put on the record. There are 10 really, but one that is close to our hearts that popped up the other day. Washington Post reporting on this one. Another Trump demand. Trump demands the release of Colorado officials sentenced in election data scheme. Yes, it is former Mesa County Clerk Tina Peters, currently serving a 9-year prison sentence, state prison sentence, on charges that include conspiracy to commit criminal impersonation. You know the backstory on Tina Peters, and you and I suspected early on in the Trump administration that as he was pardoning all of the January 6th rioters and others related to propping up his lies about the 2020 election, poor Tina Peters was going to be sitting in state prison facing state charges, unreachable by his federal pardon powers. But it also became clear pretty quickly that he was either going to just give it a shot anyway and claim to be pardoning her from the White House, which everybody supposedly knows you can't do unless all of a sudden you're pretty wrong about that, or he'd be using some other mechanism to try to pressure state authorities into using their powers to release her. And here it is, finally arriving on the scene. Amy B. Wang reports this for Washington Post. President Donald Trump is now demanding the release of a former Colorado County elections official who was sentenced to prison last year after being found guilty of charges connected to sneaking someone into her office to search for evidence to try to prove Trump's false claims that the 2020 election was stolen. Why she couldn't simply turn up the evidence in her own office? The answer is it doesn't exist. But she thought that maybe someone with a computer who was smarter than her would be able to find it. Free Tina Peters, a brave and innocent patriot. We even predicted the language, I think. Who has been tortured by crooked Colorado politicians, Trump wrote on social media Thursday morning, referring to the former Mesa County clerk serving a 9-year prison sentence on charges that include several counts of attempting to influence a public servant and conspiracy to commit criminal impersonation, identity theft, and, of course, breaking into elections facilities. Peters continued to promote baseless claims of election fraud even after she was charged. Colorado officials called Peters' sentencing fair and just and said they hoped it would serve as a warning to others who tried to illegally tamper with the state's election systems. On Thursday, though, Trump threatened unnamed consequences if Peters, 69, nice age, was not released from prison. And he furthered his own baseless claims of election fraud. Let Tina Peters out of jail right now. She did nothing wrong. I mean, the most extremist language possible in this. Except catching the Democrats cheat in the election. Every Republican accusation is a confession. She is an old woman. She's not going to appreciate that. And very sick. If she is not released, I am going to take harsh measures, Trump wrote on social media. It is unclear what action Trump could take. Because Peters was convicted in a state court, he has no clemency power in her case. In May, Trump said he had ordered the U.S. Justice Department to take all necessary action to help secure the release of Peters. Prosecutors charged Peters in 2022 and accused her of helping to secretly copy Dominion voting systems hard drives by sneaking Conan Hayes, a former professional surfer and purported computer expert, into secure areas in her office in 2021 using someone else's security badge. Within months, data from her office appeared online and was featured at a symposium held by Mike Lindell, the My Pillow guy, to trumpet false claims about elections and seek the end of use of machines that count ballots, which Trump just tacoed out of banning the other day as well, along with mail-in ballots. Anyway, this, you may recall, is the woman who was sentenced in front of Judge Matthew Barrett, who said, "You're no hero. You abused your position. You're a charlatan who used and is still using your prior position in office to peddle a snake oil that's been proven to be snake oil time and time again," before handing down that 9-year sentence. And our supposition at the time, Trump will try to hold up federal funding to Colorado unless their governor pardons her on his behalf. I bet that's going to be the play.
From netrootsradio.com, you have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
Well, there's still so much more I wanted to share with you just before the weekend, but now that falls to Justice Putnam and the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy coming up next right here on Netroots Radio. What's up top of the list? The only thing MAGA hates more than free and fair elections, it's Gavin Newsom. And he's got the Alina Habba story. More on that. Stay tuned. We'll see you next week.